The global cocoa industry is facing challenges as cocoa supplies tighten and prices surge, impacting chocolate manufacturers and consumers worldwide. Well, joining me from around this is Isaac Kofi Agyei, analyst, SBM Intelligence. Thank you, Isaac Agyei, for joining me today.
You're welcome.
All right, we see a significant decline in cocoa bean production, particularly in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, and these countries account for 60% of the global production. Talk to us about the factors that are responsible for this.
Right, so there are at least some 5 or 3 major factors that we should be talking about. The fact that the weather conditions have affected the yield, the annual yield of both Ghana and Ivory Coast. And then also if we look at some of the policies that government put in place, for instance, in Ghana, currently the government is under an IMF program, and certain subsidies that government used to give to the cocoa farmers have been truncated. And then also you can talk about illegal mining, for instance, in Ghana, where cocoa farmers are now selling their cocoa farms that they feel there's gold on it to illegal gold miners. And so if you look at the bad weather conditions and then also the soil shoot disease that has affected cocoa yields in both Ghana and Ivory Coast, plus the fact that in Ghana you have a canker to deal with, which is the illegal mining, and you see farmers selling their farmlands to cocoa farmers for an amount as low as, let's say, $5,000.
All right, I want us to talk about, some of these issues, especially the diseases and all of that. What do you have to say about them? Do you think enough measures are being taken to address these diseases affecting cocoa production?
Well, absolutely. Both Ghana and Ivory Coast are on it. But if you look at the fact that both countries have had their yields, decline by some 20% this year, tells you that both governments are really worried, especially in Ghana, for instance. We know the importance of cocoa in our country. And so if we are not getting the estimated yields annually, then government should be worried. At the moment, the Cocoa Board is actually, dealing with cocoa farmers directly. When I say the Cocoa Board, it is the agency or the body responsible for the procurement of cocoa from the farmers. Farmers are now being given incentives, such as the increment in the price at the farm gates for them to be able to afford fertilizer. But one thing that possibly will affect the Ghanaian cocoa yield, this year and then also the next season, is the fact that in the IMF program, government has been restricted or precluded from giving a subsidy in terms of the fertilizer that they give to farmers. If you also look at roads, feeder roads leading to the cocoa farms are in very deplorable state. And formerly, Cocoa Board used to, sign some of the cocoa road agreement, but now they are being restricted. IMF is saying that you cannot do that again because we sense corruption and then also some illegal activities there. And so you could see that government is doing what they can, but they are being restricted by some fiscal constraints. So they cannot do more as they were able to do, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago.
All right, when you say government is doing enough, well, for some persons, they feel like the Ghanaian government isn't really doing enough. What do you have to say about that? They are saying that they see some level of politicization. They are saying that, so many things really, and then some persons would rather give land to miners or some other things, sort of paying more attention to oil rather than cocoa.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Ghana is always possibly like following what's happening in Nigeria. You can draw a perfect correlation in there. When we discovered oil in 2011, or let me say when we started drilling, or when we started selling oil in commercial quantities, that was 2011. The cocoa yield or the production was around 1 million metric tons, over 1 million metric tons. And since that year that we started, selling oil in commercial quantities, the annual yield has dropped by more than 50%. Now we are talking about less than 600,000 metric tons a year. That tells you the kind of concentration. And even if you look at the big players, the big guys who bring in forex for Ghana, cocoa has now been relegated to sort of number 3. And it is now, gold, followed by oil. Gold is bringing in some $7 billion every year. Oil, we can talk about more than $3 billion. Cocoa is now doing less than $3 billion. The annual average over the past 3 years is below, $2.5 billion. So that tells you that a lot of the concentration has now been placed on oil. And there's also the disincentive side on the farmers. Now, you know that, when your dad or your father is a cocoa farmer and he unfortunately passes on, the family would have to give the cocoa farm possibly to, a son or a daughter to take over. But, those who are inheriting the cocoa farms do not have, the appetite to continue. They feel that this is a sector that is no longer becoming attractive. And so they end up selling their lands, especially those in the western side of the country where illegal mining is ongoing. And in the semi-deciduous forest and rainforest across the length and breadth of the country, where you have cocoa farms and at the same time, illegal miners also going there to mine. There are also concerns about, the use of mercury, around the illegal mining sites and the fact that you can find traces in the cocoa beans that we produce. All of these are factors. But the key factor is that government has now turned its attention from cocoa to now even oil. Now, if you look at the forest exchange inflow of cocoa, now, if you do some sort of seasonalization, you realize that the actual amount that comes in is even less than what tourism brings to the table every year. And so in Ghana, cocoa is losing its value in terms of being one of the big guys bringing in exchange rate as a result of several factors that, in fact, we've already spoken about.
All right, this does not only pose, risk to this country's economies, but we are also seeing that, there are risks that are even beyond these things. Can you talk to us about some of the, implications of the situation we're in right now?
Well, definitely, if you look at the books of both Ghana and Ivory Coast, they export more than 40% of their cocoa produce to Netherlands. And the Netherlands, over the years, has been able to establish itself as the middleman in Europe, where they get the cocoa from us, and then they now become the middleman in Europe and sell it to the other parts of, other countries in the European region or bloc. Now, that was not the case, some 10 years or 15 years ago. You had Ghana or Ivory Coast dealing directly with UK, with Canada, with other countries directly. But right now, Netherlands is now serving has been able to carve a niche for itself as the middleman in Europe. And you see so many geopolitics going on there. When we saw the cocoa price reach a record high of $10,000 per ton, we saw what happened. The fact that the producers will now have to now warn the traders that, look, if we sell the cocoa to you and you don't sell it upfront and you begin to hoard it, we will take sanction. That tells you that at a certain point in time, both Ghana and Ivory Coast do not have control of the quantum of volume of cocoa beans that leave the country. And they do what they call the forex sales. And so, for instance, when there's a change in price, the government of Ghana does not benefit directly because they've already benchmarked a certain price and they've already done the forex sales. So they are in the hands of other traders who will now take advantage of the system and maybe hoard to get more prizes. And so when you look at all of these things, there are some geopolitical elements in there where at the moment we know that we are about to begin a new planting season. But traders or cocoa traders are actually, delaying in the procurement process, hoping that the price will come down for them not to buy a ton for, let's say, $10,000 or $9,000.
All right, let me come in here just before we go. I am particularly bothered that major cocoa processing plants in both countries have either ceased operations or reduced processing due to the inability to afford beans at current prices. Hasn't this gone on for so long? Or what do you think? How do we get government to support this and get this to start working, really?
Well, it's a big problem. It's a big problem because the price of cocoa is pegged in dollars. And you find this producing companies or manufacturing companies in countries like Ghana, for instance, where the CD in the first quarter or the first 4 months of the year has lost more than 13% of it, 10% of its value. So $1 is selling now at 14 cedis, 50 pesos. At the beginning of the year, we're doing $1 to 11 cedis. So certainly, if you are a processing company in Ghana and you are buying the cocoa beans in dollars, it tells you that you need more cedis to buy the cocoa beans. And that's actually the problem. That's the whole problem. The whole problem is that the exchange rate situation at the moment is not helping the companies who are producing locally. And so for us to, help them or give them that sort of boost, the first thing the Ghanaian economy must tackle is the exchange rate, which the currency is not doing so well against major trading currencies.
Thank you, Isaac Agyei. I'm afraid we just have to end it here. Thank you so much for your thoughts.
You're welcome.
All right, well, that's it on this edition of Business Edge. Many thanks for watching. I am Perpetual Fasomi Peter. Enjoy the rest of the day.